In 2026, airlines are changing their carry-on rules. And if you don't know what's coming, your next trip could start with an unwelcome surprise at the gate. Picture this. You've made it through security, coffee in hand, boarding pass ready. You're walking to your gate feeling prepared. Then a gate agent stops you and points at your carry-on, the same bag you've used on every flight. That bag needs to be checked, they say. That's not a nightmare scenario. That's the new reality thousands of travelers will face in 2026 as airlines worldwide flip the switch on enforcement. This isn't about a few minor tweaks to the rules you already know. This is a complete reset of how carry-on luggage works. New size limits that include every inch of your bag, weight restrictions with built-in scales that catch you before boarding, battery rules that can get your devices confiscated on the spot, and overhead bin space that's become as competitive as getting a boarding pass itself. Miss even one of these changes, and you're looking at surprise fees, public embarrassment, or watching your belongings vanish into cargo. So before your next flight, you need to understand these 7 rules, because they're going to decide whether you breeze through boarding or get stopped cold at the gate. Let's start with the change that's catching more travelers off guard than anything else. The new standardized carry-on dimensions. After years of every airline making up their own rules, creating confusion and constant arguments at gates, 2026 is bringing one global standard. 22 inches by 14 inches by 9 inches, that's 56 by 36 by 23 centimeters if you're using the metric system. Finally, some consistency across the board. One measurement that works everywhere, except here's the part nobody's talking about. That measurement now includes absolutely everything. The wheels, the handles, the exterior pockets, anything that bulges out even slightly. If it adds an inch, it counts. For years, travelers played a game with those metal bag sizers at the gate. You'd angle your luggage just right, push it in diagonally, ignore the fact that the wheels stuck out a bit. Gate agents were busy, flights were boarding fast, and most of the time you got away with it. Those days are finished. Airlines spent the last 2 years upgrading their enforcement technology, and what's replacing those old metal frames is going to shock you. Digital scanners, sensor-equipped gates that measure your bag in 3 dimensions the moment you walk up. Some airports are testing automated systems where you place your bag on a platform. Lasers scan it instantly, and a screen lights up either green for approved or red for oversized. No human judgment involved. No pleading your case. The machine decides, and when that screen goes red, everyone in line sees it. Here's the number that should terrify anyone who hasn't checked their luggage lately. Over 60% of popular carry-on bags currently on the market fail this new standard. That roller bag you bought 3 years ago, that's worked perfectly fine. There's a strong chance it's now considered oversized once you include the wheels and handle in the measurement. And you won't discover this comfortable fact while packing at home. You'll find out at the gate, stressed, rushed, with a line of impatient travelers behind you, and a gate agent telling you it's either pay the fee or miss your flight. Those fees aren't trivial anymore either. Depending on the airline and your destination, you're looking at anywhere from $35 to over $100 for a bag that's even 1 inch over the limit, and that's assuming there's still space in the cargo hold. On fully booked flights, paying the fee doesn't even guarantee your bag makes it on the same plane. So here's what you need to do right now, before you book another flight. Measure your carry-on. Not eyeball it. Actually measure it with a tape measure. Include the wheels fully. Include the telescoping handle when it's retracted. Include any exterior pockets, even if they're empty. Add up those 3 dimensions, and if you're over 22 by 14 by 9, you're playing Russian roulette with every flight. The smart move for 2026, look for luggage specifically labeled as compliant with the new standards. Many manufacturers saw this coming and already redesigned their bags. You'll see tags that say 2026 carry-on approved or guaranteed cabin compatible. Those aren't marketing gimmicks. Those are your insurance policy against gate check fees, and you don't need to spend $300 on premium luggage. Compliance matters infinitely more than brand names, because at the end of the day, the most expensive bag you'll ever own is the one that gets taken from you at the gate and costs you a $100 fee on top of the stress. But even if your bag passes the size test, there's another enforcement wave coming that's going to catch people completely unprepared. Weight limits are getting serious. For years, airlines listed carry-on weight restrictions in their policies, usually somewhere between 15 and 22 pounds, but enforcement was spotty at best. Gate agents rarely had scales handy. Checking every passenger would slow down boarding, so unless your bag looked ridiculously heavy or you were struggling to lift it into the overhead bin, nobody said anything. That informal system is dying fast. In 2026, most major airlines are setting firm caps between 8 and 10 kilograms. That's roughly 17 to 22 pounds, depending on the carrier. Sounds reasonable until you actually start adding things up. A laptop weighs about 4 pounds. A pair of shoes adds another 2. Toiletries, a few changes of clothes, a book, a water bottle, and suddenly you're pushing 20 pounds without even trying. And here's where the new enforcement gets brutal. Airlines aren't relying on your honesty or their employees' judgment anymore. They're building the scales directly into the system. Self-check-in kiosks now have integrated weight sensors. You place your carry-on on the designated spot to print your boarding pass, and the system automatically weighs it. If you're over the limit, the screen flags you immediately. No boarding pass prints until you either pay the overweight fee or remove items. Some airlines are taking this even further with weigh-in stations at the gate itself. Picture this. You've already cleared security, bought your overpriced airport sandwich, you're waiting to board, and then your name gets called over the intercom. You walk up to the gate desk where there's a scale sitting right there in front of everyone. The agent asks you to place your bag on it. The digital display shows your weight. If you're over, you've got 3 choices. Repack right there in public, pay a surprise fee you didn't budget for, or hand over your bag for gate check and hope you see it again at your destination. This isn't speculation. This is already happening at major hubs across Europe and Asia, and US carriers are watching the results closely. The data is clear. Every extra pound of carry-on weight costs airlines money and fuel efficiency. And they've realized they can turn enforcement into profit. Every overweight bag becomes another revenue stream. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple, but most travelers won't do it until they learn the hard way. Buy a luggage scale. A small digital one costs less than $10 and fits in your palm. Weigh your packed bag before you leave home. If you're anywhere close to the limit, make adjustments before you're standing at a kiosk in panic mode. Here's a trick frequent flyers have used for years. Wear your heaviest items instead of packing them. That bulky jacket, wear it through the airport even if you're sweating. Those heavy boots, put them on instead of packing them. Yes, you'll look ridiculous walking through the terminal in winter clothes during summer, but you'll save 3 or 4 pounds off your bag weight, and that's the difference between breezing through and paying $50 you didn't need to spend. The golden rule of 2026 packing is this. If you won't use something at least 3 times during your trip, leave it home. Efficient packing isn't about bringing everything you might possibly need, it's about traveling light enough that you never trigger a weight check in the first place. Now, let's talk about your second bag, because this is where airlines are quietly tightening the screws in ways most people haven't noticed yet. Your personal item, that purse, laptop bag, backpack, or tote you bring in addition to your carry-on. In 2026, the rules around personal items are getting specific and strictly enforced. The new universal limit is 18 inches by 14 inches by 8 inches. That's 45 by 35 by 20 centimeters. And here's the critical part. That bag must fit completely under the seat in front of you. Not partially under with the top sticking out, not squeezed in at an angle. Fully under, out of sight, with the seat in front of you still able to recline normally. Why the sudden crackdown? Because too many travelers were gaming the system. They'd bring what was essentially a second carry-on, call it a personal item, and then fight for overhead bin space with both bags. Gate agents got tired of the arguments, overhead bins kept filling up too fast, and airlines realized they could sell the solution. Premium boarding groups that guaranteed bin space, but for everyone else, especially those basic economy passengers who board last, the rules are getting harsh. Here's what makes this tricky. Underseat space isn't consistent across aircraft types. On a small regional jet, that space is tiny. You're lucky to fit a laptop sleeve under there. On a wide-body international flight, you might have room for a decent-sized backpack. But the new rule doesn't care what plane you're on. If your personal item doesn't fit completely under the seat, it's getting taken. And unlike your carry-on, which might go into an overhead bin, an oversized personal item means you're handing it over for gate check, often with no guarantee about when you'll see it again. The smart strategy is simple. Go soft-sided. Hard-shell bags and rigid laptop cases are gambles. They either fit or they don't, with no flexibility. Soft bags, backpacks, duffel-style totes, these can compress and squeeze into spaces that rigid bags can't. Look for bags with smart internal organization. Multiple compartments that keep everything accessible without making the exterior bulge like you're smuggling pillows. And here's the insider move that frequent travelers swear by. Keep your irreplaceable items in your personal bag, not your carry-on. Medications, travel documents, wallet, phone charger, laptop, anything you absolutely cannot afford to lose. Because when overhead bins fill up and gate agents start grabbing carry-ons for the cargo hold, your personal item stays with you always. That's your guaranteed possession for the entire flight. Airlines are counting on travelers to ignore this rule until it's too late. They're betting you'll show up with an oversized personal item, argue for 2 minutes, then give up and hand it over because you don't want to miss your flight. But the prepared traveler, the one who measured their bag at home and packed strategically, walks past that confrontation without breaking stride. Now, here's a rule change that's actually good news, at least partially. The liquids rule is finally evolving. That notorious 3A11 regulation, 3.4 ounces per container, all containers in 1 quart-sized bag, 1 bag per passenger, has frustrated travelers since 2006. For nearly 20 years, we've been playing this ridiculous game of buying travel-sized everything and stuffing it into clear plastic bags that rip apart if you look at them wrong. Well, 2026 is bringing change. Some airports, the ones with new CT scanning technology, are now allowing full-sized liquids in carry-ons. No more tiny bottles. No more throwing away expensive perfume at security. Sounds like a dream, right? Except, here's the problem. The rollout is painfully inconsistent. Major international hubs like Atlanta, Dallas, London, Heathrow, they've invested millions in these new scanners, and they're operational now. But smaller regional airports, many of them are years behind. Budget constraints, old infrastructure, lack of trained staff, it all adds up to the same result. Half the airports you fly through allow full-size liquids, and half still enforce the old rules with zero mercy. So what happens when you fly out of a modern airport that waves you through with your full-size shampoo, and then you connect through a smaller hub that doesn't have the new scanners? Your expensive products end up in a trash bin, while a TSA agent lectures you about regulations you thought were outdated. That's why the 2026 Traveler's Golden Rule is this. Pack defensively, keep all your liquids in one clear, accessible pouch near the top of your bag. If your departure airport uses the new CT scanners, fantastic. You'll breeze through security without unpacking anything. If they don't, you can pull that pouch out in 5 seconds and toss it in a bin without dismantling your entire bag. Check your airport's website before every trip. Most major airports now list whether they support full-sized liquids under their security information section. That 1 minute of research can save you 20 minutes of repacking at a security checkpoint while angry travelers sigh behind you. And here's the workaround that smart, frequent flyers figured out years ago. Switch to solid alternatives wherever possible. Solid deodorant instead of spray, shampoo bars instead of liquid bottles, solid perfume sticks instead of glass atomizers. None of these count toward liquid limits at any airport. Old scanners or new, they're lighter, they don't leak, and they'll never get confiscated. You sacrifice a tiny bit of convenience for absolute peace of mind. And when you're rushing through an airport at 5 in the morning, peace of mind is worth more than fancy packaging. But here's where 2026 gets quietly vicious for the unprepared. Your electronics and batteries. Security isn't just checking what devices you're carrying anymore, they're checking whether those devices actually work. If a TSA agent asks you to power on your phone, tablet, or laptop, and the screen stays black because your battery died, that device is not getting through. Dead battery equals potential security threat in their protocol. No power, no boarding. Simple as that. You'll be pulled aside, questioned about why your device is dead, and in most cases, you'll be forced to leave it behind or check it separately, which most people don't realize you can't do with lithium batteries in checked luggage anyway. So, that dead laptop becomes a very expensive paperweight you're surrendering at security. Power banks are even more dangerous territory if you don't know the rules. The only number that matters in 2026 is watt-hours. Under 100 watt-hours, you're fine. Between 100 and 160 watt-hours, you need advanced airline approval, which most travelers never get because they don't even know to ask. Over 160 watt-hours, that battery is completely banned from passenger aircraft, carry-on, or checked. Now, here's the problem. Most people have never checked the watt-hour rating on their power bank. They bought it on sale. It charges their phone 3 times. Good enough. But that label on the side has critical information you're ignoring. A 20,000 mAh power bank at 3.7 volts equals about 74 watt-hours. That's safe. But if you bought a higher voltage model or a larger capacity one without doing the math, you might be carrying something that gets confiscated the moment a TSA agent spots it. And they're trained to spot them now. Those chunky rectangular batteries in your bag, they're checking. On top of that, airlines are starting to cap how many battery-powered devices you can bring on board total. 15 to 20 items sounds generous until you start counting. Phone, laptop, tablet, wireless earbuds, smartwatch, camera, e-reader, power bank, electric toothbrush, portable speaker, maybe a gaming device. If you're a tech-heavy traveler, you could be right at that limit without realizing it. The prepared traveler adapts. They charge everything the night before. Every device at 100% before leaving home. They keep their power bank and charging cables at the top of their bag, easily accessible for inspection. They take a quick photo of each device's battery specifications. So, if a TSA agent asks about watt-hours, they have proof on their phone in 3 seconds. Instead of arguing or digging through packaging they threw away months ago. The careless traveler. They're the ones standing at the security belt, watching an agent drop their expensive power bank into a bin marked confiscated items, all because they never checked a label. And if you think that's harsh, wait until you hear about smart luggage. Those sleek, tech-enabled suitcases with built-in USB charging ports, GPS tracking, and electronic locks seemed like the future of travel just a few years ago. In 2026, they're becoming expensive liabilities unless they meet one very specific requirement. the battery must be removable. Not accessible, not rechargeable in place, actually removable by hand in under 10 seconds. If it's permanently installed, if it requires tools to extract, if the manufacturer sealed it inside, that bag cannot board a passenger aircraft, period. This rule exists because of legitimate safety concerns. Lithium-ion batteries have caused fires on aircraft. Small ones, yes, but in an enclosed cabin at 35,000 feet, even a small fire is a massive problem. Several incidents in recent years involved smart luggage that couldn't be powered down, smoke in the cabin, emergency landings, evacuation procedures, all because a suitcase battery malfunctioned and nobody could remove it. Airlines responded with a blanket policy: removable battery or it doesn't fly. And here's the part that catches travelers off guard. Even if your bag technically has a removable battery, you need to be able to demonstrate that at security. An agent can ask you to remove it on the spot. If you can't, if you forgot how, if you've never actually tried and it's harder than you thought, you're stuck. Either check the bag empty and lose all your belongings for the flight, or abandon it entirely. Manufacturers have adapted. Newer models have quick-release battery compartments. One button, slide it out, carry the battery separately in your personal item where it's allowed, then pop it back in when you land. Some brands even sell retrofit kits for older models, but not every bag can be upgraded. If you bought a smart suitcase before 2020 and it has a sealed battery, you're looking at replacing it or checking it without any electronics active, which defeats the entire purpose of smart luggage. Seasoned travelers treat their battery check like showing ID. They test the release mechanism at home. They charge it to at least 50% before travel. They keep the battery slot clean and functional, and when they reach security, they can pop that battery out in 5 seconds with no fumbling or confusion. Now we get to the final battlefield: the overhead bin war. Because in 2026, that cramped space above your seat has become the most valuable real estate in aviation. Airlines have spent the last 5 years squeezing more seats into every aircraft. Tighter rows, thinner cushions, anything to add another revenue-generating passenger. The result is fewer open bins per passenger and a lot more anger in the aisles. Combine that with faster turnaround times, flights packed to capacity, and a growing list of premium boarding tiers designed to let people pay extra just to board early. And you have a system where economy travelers, boarding last, often have zero overhead space left by the time they get on the plane. Basic economy tickets are the biggest losers here. These deeply discounted fares come with serious restrictions, and the most painful one is boarding group. You're called last after first class, after premium economy, after regular economy, after families with small children, after elite status holders. By the time you walk down that jet bridge, every overhead bin in the first 20 rows is full. You're carrying a perfectly regulation-sized bag. You did everything right, and it doesn't matter. There's nowhere to put it. A flight attendant sees you standing there, slaps a gate check tag on your bag, and down it goes into cargo. Your laptop, your medications, your change of clothes, all of it disappearing while you take your seat with just whatever you stuffed in your pockets. There is a strategy to win this game, and frequent travelers have it down to a science. First rule: board the instant your group is called. Don't wait. Don't stop at the duty-free shop. Don't take your time finishing your coffee. The moment you hear your boarding group announced, you move. Every 60 seconds you delay is another few bins filled by other passengers. Second rule: travel with an underseat bag that holds your absolute essentials. Passport, wallet, phone, charger, medications, anything you cannot function without. If your main carry-on gets gate-checked, you still have what matters most within arm's reach for the entire flight. Here's a subtle trick that works if you're traveling with a companion. Instead of both of you bringing full-sized carry-ons and fighting for 2 overhead spaces, share one larger bag and each bring a personal item. You've cut your overhead bin needs in half. Doubled your chances of keeping the important bag on board, and you've still got all your essentials accessible under the seats. Airlines are betting you'll show up unprepared, panic when there's no space, and accept whatever happens. But the prepared traveler doesn't panic. They board early, they pack smart, and they keep their irreplaceable items where no gate agent can touch them. So here's the bottom line. These aren't minor updates to rules you already know. This is a fundamental reset of how carry-on luggage works in 2026. Size limits that include every bulge and protrusion, weight restrictions enforced by built-in scales at kiosks and gates, personal item dimensions that must fit completely under the seat with no exceptions, liquid rules that vary by airport and can trap you on connections, electronics that must power on or get confiscated, batteries with watt-hour limits most people have never calculated, smart luggage that needs removable batteries or it doesn't board, an overhead bin space that's become a competitive blood sport where economy passengers lose by default. Ignore these changes and you're setting yourself up for surprise fees, public embarrassment, or watching your belongings disappear into cargo with no guarantee they'll arrive when you do. But adapt now, before your next trip. And you'll move through airports like you've got insider knowledge while everyone else argues with gate agents. Measure your luggage tonight. Actually, measure it with a tape measure, wheels and handles included. If you're over the limit, replace it before you fly again. Buy a $10 luggage scale and weigh your packed bag every single time. Keep a soft-sided, underseat bag for essentials that stays with you no matter what. Check your departure and arrival airports for CT scanner status. Charge all your electronics fully before you leave home. Know your power bank's watt-hour rating or don't bring it. If you have smart luggage, test the battery removal process until you can do it in your sleep. The travelers who prepare for 2026 now will glide through check-in, security, and boarding while others panic. Airports are evolving fast. Scanners, sensors, automated enforcement, it's all accelerating. And the confusion will only get worse before it gets better. But you're not confused anymore. You know exactly what's coming. Which of these rules shocked you most? Comment below and tell me. Did you even know about the watt-hour limits on power banks? Have you measured your carry-on, including the wheels? I read every comment because your stories help other travelers avoid the same mistakes. If this video just saved you from a $100 gate check fee or a confiscated device, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because airline rules are changing faster than ever, and the next wave of restrictions is already being tested at airports right now. Until then, measure your bags, charge your devices, pack strategically, and remember, the smoothest travelers aren't the luckiest ones. They're the ones who saw what was coming and prepared before everyone else figured it out. Safe travels, and may your carry-on always fit.